For weeks, Mali has been drowning in a fuel crisis. Streets have gone quiet, businesses have slowed, and the nation has been waiting for someone, anyone, to step in. But no African country moved. Not even the African Union offered support. The silence was loud and painful. Then, in a moment no one expected, Niger, Mali's partner in the AES alliance, broke that silence. They sent more than 4 million liters of fuel, a lifeline powerful enough to ease the crisis, at least for now. But this story goes far beyond fuel. It reveals a deeper problem on the continent: the lack of unity among African nations. When one country struggles, most stand aside. And as long as that continues, Africa will always move slower than it should. In today's documentary, we'll explore why Niger stepped in when others didn't, and what this moment truly says about the future of African solidarity. Mali has been living through one of its worst crises in recent history. For more than 2 months, starting in late September 2025, the country has been strangled by a brutal fuel shortage. Jihadists and armed groups blocked key supply routes, cutting off the movement of fuel, food, and essential goods. The economy slowed to a crawl. Ordinary people couldn't travel. Businesses went dark. Life in Mali felt like it was grinding to a halt. And while the world watched, Western analysts began making bold predictions. By mid-October, many were already saying Bamako was on the verge of collapse, claiming the blockade would break public trust and push Mali into chaos. French media took it even further. 2 major outlets, recently suspended by Malian authorities, declared confidently that the capital would soon fall into jihadist hands. They insisted the government was powerless, that the military leadership had no solution, and that the fuel crisis would be the breaking point. This wasn't just reporting, it was a narrative suggesting Mali was doomed, but the real story unfolding inside the country was far more complex and far more revealing than what these headlines wanted the world to believe. But here's the part the world didn't expect. Mali is still standing. The capital has not fallen. Terrorists have not overrun Bamako. And despite the fear, despite the hardship, the people of Mali have not turned against their leaders. In fact, their support for the military government remains strong, unshaken. Yet today's story isn't about Mali's resilience. It's about something even more powerful and far more rare in Africa: the solidarity inside the AES alliance, a level of unity that other regional blocs can only dream of. Because while Mali was fighting this crisis alone, while fuel was disappearing and the economy was slowing, not a single African country, not even the African Union, stepped in to help. And this shouldn't shock anyone. In Africa, when a nation is in crisis, that nation is almost always left to face the storm alone. The most you hear is sympathy, not assistance. Help only arrives when the crisis begins to spill across borders. We've seen it before. In 2011, when insecurity first erupted in Mali, even its neighbors, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, stood aside. Only when the entire Sahel was drowning in the same threat did they finally take action, forming a joint force with heavy support from France. Think about that. African unity didn't bring them together. Foreign intervention did. And that's the heart of today's conversation. Sadly, Mali is not an isolated case. Look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. For decades, the DRC has been trapped in a cycle of violence. And yet the ones leading the so-called efforts for peace are foreigners, not Africans. The African Union, the very institution meant to defend the continent, has been silent, or worse, limited to empty speeches. It's embarrassing, it's painful, and it raises a hard question. How can Africa solve its problems when its own institutions refuse to take the lead? Even the latest peace deal in the DRC, one that is already failing, was drafted by the United States and not by African leaders. And of course, it came with a price: access to DRC's minerals. If the AU had been the one negotiating, would it have demanded Congo's resources in exchange for peace? Absolutely not. But because Africa hesitated to unite, outsiders stepped in, shaped the solution to fit their interests, and delivered a deal that solves nothing. The insecurity continues, the suffering continues, and this, right here, is the real cost of Africa's reluctance to stand together. We see the exact same tragedy unfolding in Libya. 14 years after the fall of Gaddafi, the country is still shattered. No stable government, civilians caught in endless suffering, and armed groups controlling entire regions. Human traffickers operate freely. Chaos has replaced what was once one of Africa's most prosperous nations. And yet again, not a single African country has stepped forward to help rebuild Libya. Everyone is minding their own business, pretending the crisis doesn't exist. This silence, this indifference, is one of the main reasons true African unity remains a dream instead of a reality. For decades, the African Union has been trying to build the African Free Trade Area and push deeper integration. But how can unity succeed when nations trust outsiders more than their own neighbors? African countries happily open their borders for European, Asian, and American trade. But when it comes to trading with each other, they shut the gates and tighten security. Borders become walls instead of bridges. This mindset, this hesitation to trust one another, is why African unity keeps failing. Unity requires courage. It requires cooperation. And right now, too many countries in Africa still believe they stand stronger alone. But the AES alliance is proving something powerful, something many believed was impossible. African unity can work. When countries stand together, when they respond to a neighbor's crisis as if it were their own, disaster can be stopped before it grows. And that's exactly what we just witnessed. While the rest of the continent stayed silent, Niger stepped forward. On November 25th, they sent a massive convoy of 82 fuel tankers into Mali, more than 4 million liters of fuel. A lifeline delivered at the moment Mali needed it most. This shipment wasn't business. It wasn't a loan. It was a donation, a gesture of solidarity organized directly with Malian authorities. The fuel will be distributed through storage centers to stabilize the local market, ease the shortages, and bring immediate relief to millions. In fact, it is one of the largest support shipments Mali has received from any neighboring country in 2025. And in that moment, AES showed what the rest of Africa has failed to do for decades. Act as one, move as one, and protect one another without waiting for outsiders to take the lead. The fuel convoy sent by Niger wasn't just a donation, it was a bold operation. Initiated by President Abdourahmane Tiani himself, the 82 tankers traveled along the dangerous Niamey-Bamako corridor, a route often threatened by armed groups. Yet, against all odds, every single tanker reached the Malian capital safely. The government officially received them and handed them over to the Minister of Industry and Trade. This is significant because, since the blockade began, most drivers refused to enter Mali at all. Jihadists had been attacking tanker drivers, burning trucks, and terrorizing anyone trying to bring fuel into the country. But this time, the convoy moved without interruption, likely because it was heavily protected. It wasn't just fuel arriving in Bamako, it was hope. And for Mali, this shipment means everything. The country depends heavily on imported fuel, nearly 40,000 barrels per day, or about 6.3 to 6.5 million liters daily. Most of this is used for road transport and the rising demand for electricity. Without its own refining capacity, Mali is extremely vulnerable to blockades, embargoes, and disruptions. That's why this delivery from Niger is so important. Authorities in Bamako say the arrival of these 82 tankers will help stabilize the domestic market, even if only temporarily. But in a moment of crisis, temporary relief can mean the difference between a functioning country and total shutdown. In simple terms, this new shipment gives Mali room to breathe. It allows the government to stabilize fuel supplies in the short term while the country waits for more permanent solutions. But the impact goes deeper than fuel. It will help restart businesses that were slowing down. It will boost public confidence in the government at a time when many expected chaos. And most importantly, it proves the real value of the AES alliance, an African partnership built on action, not speeches. What makes this moment even more powerful is that Niger has done this before. In 2024, northern Mali faced another severe fuel shortage that sent prices through the roof. In Timbuktu, a single liter of gasoline jumped from 700 CFA to as high as 3,000, 5,000, even 7,000 CFA francs. In Menaka, prices became unbearable. In Bandiagara, fuel disappeared entirely, freezing transport, hurting farmers, and suffocating local trade. Gao also suffered price spikes of 1,500 to 2,000 CFA per liter, triggering economic panic. Once again, it was Niger that stepped in with support, and once again, they helped prevent an already fragile region from tipping into collapse. The fuel shortage didn't just raise prices, it brought life in northern Mali to a halt. With no fuel, transportation stopped completely. Weekly markets that once buzzed with traders fell silent. Farmers couldn't run their equipment. Entire communities were frozen in place. Even Bamako felt the shock. Long lines formed at gas stations, tempers flared, and spontaneous protests erupted. Taxi drivers, traders, and ordinary citizens watched their livelihoods collapse overnight. What began as a shortage quickly grew into a social crisis. But the 2024 crisis was very different from what Mali faces today. This time, jihadists weren't the cause. Instead, the problem came from rising tensions with Algeria. Everything escalated after Algeria shot down a Malian military drone, claiming it had entered Algerian airspace by 2 kilometers. Mali rejected this version completely, saying the drone was actually destroyed in Tinzaouaten, on Malian soil. This border region is not just a line on a map, it has become a hideout for Tuareg separatist fighters who have destabilized northern Mali since 2015. The drone incident pushed diplomatic tensions higher, and the fallout disrupted fuel routes, triggering the shortage that crippled the region. What most people don't know is this: the drone wasn't shot down by the Algerian military at all. It was the Tuareg rebels. Just hours after Algeria claimed responsibility, the rebel leaders stepped forward and boldly said they destroyed the aircraft, calling it a drone belonging to the terrorist junta in Bamako. That alone speaks volumes. For reasons Algeria has never fully explained, its government has consistently protected and supported these separatist fighters. And this is nothing new. For years, Algeria has backed nearly every opposition movement against the Malian state. Religious groups, secular groups, tribal groups. They have used these factions as leverage against Bamako. Yet even under pressure, Mali's military government refused to bend. But that story is for another day. After the drone incident, both nations shut down their airspace. Flights stopped. Communication froze. But Algeria went even further. They imposed a blockade on subsidized goods entering northern Mali, especially fuel. And this decision hit Mali where it hurts most. Unlike the south, which receives supplies from several neighbors, northern Mali depends almost entirely on Algeria for essential products like pasta, flour, and most importantly, fuel. Reports later revealed that this blockade wasn't Algeria's idea alone. It was pushed by the Tuareg rebel leaders themselves. In other words, the very groups destabilizing northern Mali were influencing Algeria's policy, and the people of Mali paid the price. These so-called leaders, the Tuareg rebel commanders, went even further. They banned the sale of Algerian fuel inside northern Mali, fully aware that this region depends almost entirely on that supply. And that decision is not just foolish, it is cruel. These rebels live among the very people they claim to represent, yet they cut off their access to fuel, knowing it would cripple daily life. The result was immediate: shortages, chaos, and a shocking rise in fuel prices that ordinary Malians simply could not afford. But make no mistake, these rebels were not suffering. They almost certainly kept their own supply of fuel flowing. In fact, there is little doubt they not only had unlimited access, but may have been selling fuel themselves at extreme prices. And every franc they collected likely went straight back into financing their operations. More weapons, more recruits, more instability. So while innocent civilians struggled to survive, these armed groups were turning fuel into profit and profit into power. In the middle of all this chaos, it was Niger, once again, that stepped forward. Under the leadership of Niger's military government, a convoy of 40 fuel tankers was sent straight into northern Mali. Escorted by joint security forces, the convoy pushed through dangerous territory and finally reached Gao, bringing relief to a region on the brink of collapse. That single act prevented a humanitarian disaster. And now, history seems to be repeating itself. Niger has come to Mali's aid again. This is what true solidarity looks like. This is what the AES represents. An alliance where members don't wait for outsiders. They help each other. And this spirit of unity is exactly what could make the AES one of the most powerful blocs in Africa. Because when African nations actually stand together, they accomplish the impossible. This was the dream of Pan-African giants like Kwame Nkrumah and Muammar Gaddafi, leaders who believed Africa could rise only through cooperation. But their vision was ignored, dismissed, or feared by other leaders. Today, the African Union still speaks of unity, still holds conferences, still issues declarations. Yet very little changes on the ground. Meanwhile, the AES is showing unity instead of preaching it. And if this continues, it may reshape Africa's future more than any speech or summit ever could. The solidarity between the AES countries is what every bloc or African countries should strive to achieve, because this is how the continent would grow collectively. The era of every African country being left to do their own thing should be eliminated. It is time for Africans to work together and build the continent. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.